Welcome back to Fast Money. Simple question here. What's the price of Bitcoin? Well, the answer is not as simple as the Bitcoin bug at the lower left of your screen, and that's created a windfall for one very bright 21-year-old. Stefan Chin is the founder of Virgil Capital, a hedge fund that focuses on the different prices that Bitcoin is trading at on different exchanges. Stefan, we welcome you to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So you put your college studies on hold in order to do this, and essentially you take advantage of the arbitrage that exists across exchanges?
Yep, exactly. So there's a bunch of different price discrepancies between all the markets and Bitcoin right now. And this is quite obvious for people like us at Virgil Capital who try and take advantage of these opportunities to make a lot of money.
How exactly do you do this?
Yeah, it's a good question. So right now, unlike the traditional equities markets or the Forex markets or something like that, you've got almost hundreds of different exchanges, each with their own different prices and different competing traders, right? So what we have is essentially a proprietary technology that connects to all these different exchanges and looks for these price differences and buys low in one and sells high in another. So that's what we do.
It can't be as simple as that. I mean, I'm sure there are some exchanges where you can't easily transfer foreign money.
Yeah, exactly. So when people first get into Bitcoin, they see these like 20%, 30% differences in price between exchanges, and their mind is boggled because there's nowhere else in the world where this exists, right? But it's obviously not as easy as it sounds, like you just mentioned. So essentially what we do is we look for the price differences as fast as we can, and we try and gobble them up before anyone else gets there, right? And like you said before, there are these huge barrier of entries behind actually trading in these different markets. So it's not as easy as, say, just putting some US dollar in a US exchange account like Coinbase and then selling it in Korea, for example, right? You've got to have some banking relation, for example, in Korea, or some way to actually access those different markets in the different countries, which not everyone has.
So I'm curious, do you do it just with Bitcoin or do you do it with other digital currencies?
Yeah, it's a good question. So there are hundreds of cryptocurrencies, right? And what this means is there are hundreds of different markets to do arbitrage over. Some might be more attractive than others. We primarily do three different currencies. That's that's Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Ripple.
Real quick question for you. So do you go home every single night flat, or do you take some risk on overnight as well?
Yeah, that's a good question. So primarily what we are is a market neutral fund, meaning that we're not exposed at all to the ups and downs or the roller coasters of the cryptocurrency market. To some extent, unfortunately, because you miss out on a lot of FOMO, right? So that means that no matter what happens, even if the market goes up or down, we're still unexposed or completely hedged against the risk of Bitcoin crashing, for example.
Do you see that arbitrage opportunity diminishing over time?
Yeah, it's a good question. So if we actually look at the traditional Forex markets or the stock markets, it took a long time for these arbitrage opportunities to actually diminish. For example, there was the difference between offshore yuan and onshore yuan in China, for example, which actually took many, many years to diminish, even though a lot of institutions saw the differences in prices, but they took a long time to actually capture those opportunities. I expect the same thing to happen with cryptocurrency as long as there's volatility, because whenever there's volatility, there's price inefficiencies, right? And if you're similar to me, who believes there will be a lot of volatility in the long run, I give it a longer timeline than it going away in the next few months, for example.
Last quick question. We got 10 seconds. What's the best arbitrage opportunity right now in the markets, taking into consideration the ease of entry into each market?
Yeah, that's a good question. I hate to say this because it's competing against us, but obviously if you look at the Asian versus the Western markets, try and get into those as quick as you can.
So South Korea, for instance, or
South Korea is a bit harder, but China, for example, Japan is a good one. Yeah.
Stefan, great to have you with us. Hope you come back. Stefan Chin. What do you think, Beeks? We talked about the arbitrage before. It's kind of hard for the average person to do.
Listen, it's labor intensive. So Stefan obviously has a computer program plugs into the API that you're able to do this. If you have those skills, that great. You can do it by hand. It's just a little labor intensive to do it. And I agree, these arbitrage opportunities will be around for a while because there's still a lot of infrastructure that needs to be built and friction out there that's causing